Yes, well, joining us now to look at the situation for both visitors and those in care is Nadra Ahmed OBE, Executive Chair of the National Care Association. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, what do you make of the possible easing of restrictions in care home? Is it too soon or is it a welcome move?
Good morning. Well, I think it had to happen. There's an inevitability that we've got to get back to some form of normality as soon as we possibly can. So I think any time might feel like it's too soon, but we as a sector will move towards it because that's the guidance that's going to be provided. And we've always worked with any guidance that comes through because that's all we can do. It does come at a time where we still have chronic staffing shortages and the virus is out there. So the IPC measures, which is the prevention control measures in care services, will just need to continue to be much, much stronger as much as we possibly can. And that depends on also the masks that we're given, that they're the right quality. So we can keep our residents safe, we can keep our staff safe, but we can also keep the visitors safe.
Do you have some, experiences really of relatives there essentially begging to be allowed to see their other relatives in their dying moments? It must have been very difficult for the care workers to say no to that, as well as obviously for the families involved.
Well, end-of-life care has always been within the guidance to be facilitated, except in the very early stages where everything was a bit chaotic and nobody had thought about what was going to happen in social care settings. So there was a blanket that was brought out by government. But since then, we have always maintained that end-of-life is something that should be facilitated for families to attend and to be able to do that safely, because that is a challenge. It's an enormous challenge. The same thing happened in hospitals where people were not allowed to go in. But we know more now and we're mitigating that. Very difficult for staff. We had staff trying to do things that should have been done by professionals. But of course, the primary care services all shut down. There was no CQC around to support the sector. We were pretty much left on our own. And our staff were being asked to deliver services that actually they weren't trained up for, and they were being told how to do through videos and things, which was appalling. And the harrowing stories from some of our staff members who used to watch that and didn't know what to do because we didn't have ventilators in our hospital. We didn't have oxygen available in residential settings. No. Those were harrowing moments. And we know a lot of staff that actually left because of that, because it was just too traumatic to live through that. So the trauma for our teams, as well as for the residents' families who were not able to be there, but maybe had to watch it on a video, is dreadful. There's no doubt about it.
No, there isn't. And I think I've got a lot of people emailing in just right in front of me now saying, well, look, hey, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I certainly was not talking about in my opening address, necessarily right at the very start where it was all chaotic and, we didn't know, frankly, how bad this thing was going to be. It was more for me those images of, frankly, not that long ago, maybe about 6 months ago, of people still kind of not being able to go and take their parents out of care homes, etc., etc., etc. And I think that for me was just completely unforgivable. But what did you make of what happened right at the start when people were being moved into care homes who had COVID? They were being sent into care homes that weren't even necessarily their own care home. I mean, that was devastating, wasn't it?
It was absolutely devastating. It was devastating for the person that was being moved. And we must always remember at the centre of all this is the individual that this is happening to. For families to suddenly find out their loved one was being moved out, and for the care service who's been told that, there's no need to worry about it. This person doesn't have COVID. They're going to come into your service. You don't need to worry about it. We didn't know about isolation. We didn't have that sort of testing regime out there. And then we didn't have GP support at all, or any support from the NHS. So it was challenging, but we must never forget it was the person who was being moved very, very quickly out of a setting and put into a care home where they didn't know. This was totally alien to them. They couldn't be sent home because there was no staff available to look after them at home. And I think at the centre of all of this is the people that had to go through that.
Mm. And Nadra Ahmed, just finally, very quickly, I mean, do you think we're now learning the lessons? I mean, the government has announced that much more is going to be done to deal with the social care crisis and so on. Do you think that we are now learning the lessons?
Well, I think we as a sector are learning the lessons. I think government is full of empty promises, and there's no real plan about fixing social care. This is about stabilising the NHS, so they need to stop using that strap line. And we need to be very clear there's not much funding coming towards us.
Yeah, I agree. And of course, as well, I would hope there's some kind of plan in place to compensate for a lot of the people who are unvaccinated, staff-wise, who are going to lose their jobs, essentially. Is there?
Well, we don't know at this moment in time, but let's wait and see. If they halt it for the NHS, then we are going to, as social care, be worrying about why we had to go through that. Why were we the guinea pigs? Why were we picked on as a sector that they would try it out on? If they, we have the same staffing crisis, actually more. We had 120,000 vacancies at that time. We lost 40,000. We continue not to be able to take people in. We're being held to ransom by agencies who are charging extortionate rates to bring staff in. It's an enormous challenge for us.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Well, look, Nadra, thank you very much. Nadra Ahmed OBE, Executive Chair of the National Care Association.